So moving on, I saw this article and I thought it was very, very interesting. Jaws star Richard Dreyfuss, which also, it's kind of like, come on, man. Richard Dreyfuss has been in a lot of movies. He's got to get bothered by the fact that, like, he did Jaws 40 years ago or something like that, and he's still Jaws star Richard Dreyfuss. Like, he's not What About Bob star Richard Dreyfuss or, you know, any of these other things. Like, no, it's still Jaws. That's the only way he's known. But I thought it was very interesting. So at first I was like, it was Hollywood's new diversity rules are making, you know, Richard Dreyfuss sick. And I was like, what are they talking about here? Legendary actor Richard Dreyfuss condemned the inclusivity changes that will be implemented for next year's Oscars, saying the new standards, quote, make me vomit. So I thought, okay, what the heck? I mean, inclusivity rules. Yeah, I was like, makes me vomit. They're like, okay, are they like that? If you didn't read anything else, you would think, oh, okay, Richard Dreyfuss is against inclusiveness, right? Inclusivity. He does not want diversity in movies. Like, this is what you would think. And he said, this is an art form. It's also a form of commerce, and it makes money, but it's an art. And no one should be telling me as an artist that I have to give into the latest, most current idea of what morality is. So I was like, okay, I'm going to keep reading this. And he said, what are we risking? Are we really risking hurting people's feelings? You can't legislate that. And you have to let life be life. And I'm sorry, I don't think that there is a minority or a majority in this country that has to be catered to like that. So I was like, okay, very interesting. And for the record, I don't necessarily totally disagree with what I had read at that point. And I had no idea that starting in 2024, a film has to meet certain diversity and inclusion standards in 4 different categories that were set out by the Academy of Motion Pictures Arts and Sciences to even be considered for Best Picture at the Oscars. So it's not just a matter of the movies come out, they're great movies, they're incredibly well made, and then they can be nominated for Best Picture. Not anymore. Doesn't matter how good the movie is. Now they have very specific things that you have to be graded on, these 4 categories. The categories each pertain to a different aspect of the movie's production, and they would require new diversity measures to be met through on-screen representation, creative leadership and project team, industry access and opportunities, and audience advancement. And so on-screen representation is classified as at least one lead character from an underrepresented racial or ethnic group having at least 30% of secondary roles be from 2 underrepresented groups, or the main storyline has to focus on an underrepresented group. So think about this. You're making a film, and now you have to calculate percentages on whether or not this could ever be considered. So you have to say, okay, well, if in this one category alone, we have to have at least one lead character from an underrepresented group. We have to have at least 30% of secondary roles be from 2 underrepresented groups, or the main storyline has to focus on an underrepresented group. I mean, like it's bringing mathematics into art. And It just seemed crazy. And I mean, it struck me as surprising. I had not heard about this.
No.
And so Richard Dreyfuss comes out and he was very opposed to this. Now, I will say this. At this point, it seems like things went a little off the rails as far as what Richard Dreyfuss was saying. Okay. My feelings kind of stop where I just said. Like, this stuff seems a little overboard to me when it's art and you're saying, yeah, but you have to do this, have this number, this percentage has to meet this and do this. Then Dreyfuss went on to say, and keeping in mind, he's an Academy Award winner.
Sure.
He mentioned the fact that Laurence Olivier was in Othello. And he said that Olivier did it in 1965. And he did it in blackface. And he played a black man brilliantly, Dreyfuss said. Am I being told I will never have a chance to play a black man? Is someone else being told that if they're not Jewish, they shouldn't play the Merchant of Venice? Are we crazy? Do we not know what art or that art is art? This is so patronizing. It's so thoughtless and treating people like children. Now, again, I agree with most of that quote. Most of it. Should Richard Dreyfuss play a black guy? I don't know. So times have changed a little bit. I don't know. But I do agree with him that it is a little bit of a slippery slope, right? So it's sort of like, because he does make this other mention of, should you have to be Jewish to play the Merchant of Venice? I'll be the first to say I've not seen the Merchant or read the Merchant of Venice. I didn't know that was centered specifically around a Jewish person. I hear Venice, I'm just assuming Italian dude. But that is tricky, right? Because one should just be as important as the other. And I think even though maybe he misses the mark a little bit on how he's delivering this, I get his point in terms of, well, where exactly is the true equality in this, right? So like, how far down the rabbit hole do you want to go about making sure that each little thing is perfect? So if you were playing a real person who was 100% Asian, but you were only half Asian, should you be allowed to play that role? Right. And it starts to get into a very difficult area to legislate, I think.
Oh, yeah. It's I just wonder if, this doesn't mean that movies aren't going to be made. It just means that they can't be up for an Academy Award. So, or directors, writers, are they even going to care anymore?
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah. Nobody watches the Academy Awards anyways anymore because it has just become a political, love fest, and it's a little ridiculous. But so, you so if you have, an Italian mob movie,
mm-hmm.
you can't be considered for it unless you have, a female playing the head, even though, like, I don't.
Or you have to find 30% of people underrepresented. And again, how would that happen?
I don't know.
How is it going to happen that it's a mob movie, but 30% of people have to be minorities? Well, okay, in the Mafia, they were pretty specific about what it took to be able to get in and who wasn't going to be allowed in. And like, I just feel like that's where the slippery slope is, right? It's art. If you're a director and you create a film, it is the film that you ideated. You created this in your mind, and then you shot it to be the way you wanted it to be. And so then the idea that people would say, it might be good, but it's not good to win an award for because your version of the way this isn't inclusive enough. And again, in what way, right? So like if it was an all black movie, is that cool? Even though no one else is represented? If it's an all Asian movie, like, are you telling me Crazy Rich Asians, that movie can't come out now unless 30% of the people are black or white or what? Like, I don't understand how that can work.
Right. Or
Tyler Perry's going to go out of business.
Yeah, he's done for. he's done for.
So that's the stuff I don't understand.
But if you're let's just say you're a gay actor and you're playing the lead straight boss guy, can you play that then? Because
right, great point.
You're not straight in real life.
Yeah.
Can't someone just come up with new awards? Like does the Oscars have a just a stranglehold on this? Like nobody else is allowed to come up with anything?
I guess you got the People's Choice Awards and some of these other things, Golden Globes and stuff.
Golden Globes and stuff like that. But like, all right, just make a more prestigious award. Like, just stop giving in to these people. Like, okay, Oscars, great. You can just go by the wayside. We don't care. If I'm an actor, if I'm a director, like, I'm going to make the movie I want to make. If I don't get nominated for it, okay. Yeah. It's just, this is odd. Yeah. So it's just, but no, I don't think Richard Dreyfuss should play a black man ever in his life.
Mainly for no other reason. I just don't think I could be convinced. I just don't. I don't think he could sell me on the idea that
No.
like I don't think that Richard Dreyfuss. What was the movie with Will Smith when he was like a homeless dude? Pursuit of Happiness.
Pursuit of Happiness.
The Pursuit of Happiness. It would be a very different movie if it was Richard Dreyfuss in blackface in the Will Smith role.
Yeah.
Can you imagine Training Day with Richard Dreyfuss in blackface in the Denzel Washington role at the end of the movie, screaming at all the gangsters in the neighborhood?
King Kong ain't got
Shoe
nothing
program.
on me.
24-hour lockdown. It's Richard Dreyfuss yelling it.
Yeah. Oh, that's too funny. Yeah. I don't, but I mean, honestly, has there ever been anyone do blackface that you were like, yeah, you could pass for a black man. I'm presuming that even a Laurence Olivier didn't really pass for a black man. Like maybe he played the role, right?
In my opinion, the best to ever do it is probably Robert Downey Jr. in Tropic Thunder.
Knew you were going to go there.
I mean, if you didn't know, I don't think it would have jumped out to you. Like, I think Robert Downey Jr. played a black dude as well as it could be played in blackface parody in a film. Which is, again, that's still a lot of steps down from like authentic reality. But
I mean, gosh, there's a movie that could never be made ever again.
And yet, here's the we don't have to go too far down this topic, but man, you bring up a great point. Tropic Thunder could not be made today. But if you watch Tropic Thunder today, it's hilarious. People today who watch it think it's hilarious. So then it makes you wonder, why? Why can't it be made today? Right? Like people say the same thing about The Office, right? Where it's like, oh, you couldn't make that show today. But yet people love it. It's as popular or more popular than it was when it was on.
I don't think anyone has the stones to do it these days. I think that's probably just what it is that you just don't have the stones to do it. Nobody wants to take the backlash. Nobody wants to, be considered bigots and phobes and everything else. Brandon Jackson, who played Alpha Cheetah, I mean, he went like toe to toe with Robert Downey Jr. in that movie. It was freaking hilarious.
Yes.
I mean, calling him out.
Yeah, there was a black dude in the movie. He was not offended by Robert Downey Jr. It's like, why can't it just be that it's funny? And again, we're not out here trying to push for more blackface films, right? Like that's not the idea.
No, just don't do that.
That doesn't need to happen.
No.
But the point is that this idea, the bigger idea of the things that kind of like quote unquote couldn't be made nowadays, you hear that all the time. But why? Because of like 2% of the population?
Of course, yes. But
nobody thinks Tropic Thunder was offensive. Nobody thinks Tropic Thunder was offensive. I mean, let me say, no sane person thinks that. Someone who's looking to have their feelings hurt or be offended. There's a lot of times where I think somehow the lines have gotten blurred between being offended by something and recognizing something that could be offensive to someone somewhere. And I think we have a lot of people in this world that find it their job to police for something that could possibly be offensive to someone somewhere, even if it's not offensive to them. And then they put this on Twitter and they try to make a whole big thing about it and a bunch of virtue signaling and everything else. That's great, but you aren't even offended by it. You just think someone might be offended by it. And it's just crazy to me.
I've often said that, like, I am never going to be offended for another person. Like, come on. People have their own, if you're offended, fine. But I'm not going to be offended for you. I just, too much. Yeah,
it's very crazy. And then, the last thing, too, is for some reason, like, we talk about, races and stuff like this as like authenticity. We both have our head shaved. So should only bald people be allowed to play bald people in films?
They better. They better. I will be offended.
Yeah. That's deeply offensive to me. If Matt Damon wears a bald cap, I'm offended by that because he's not bald.
No. No.
Right?
Don't
Be
act
authentic.
like you're
Hire
bald.
us.
That's right.
Yeah. Matt Damon, you're out. we
You're
gotta
out.
we gotta
You need
be
to
more
go with
authentic.
Yeah, these guys are legitimately bald.
That's right.
Yeah. Sorry. Well, we don't make the rules.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, they're not nearly as good as you. They don't have any perceivable skill or talent in this particular area, but their hair doesn't grow and yours does. So
That's right.
that's it.
So
That's all it takes.
sorry. Again, we don't make the rules.
That's right. Someone out there does, and we just follow them blindly.
We just follow them blindly.